Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Message Marketing Pod. I'm your host, Christopher Melotti here from Melotti Content Media, and I have some awesome, really great guests with me today. This is a special episode. And in this episode, I'm going to get them to introduce themselves in a second, but we're going to talk about corporate identity. And I have my notes here: corporate identity, organizational alignment, and cultural unification. Now, the reason why this is a great topic right now is because it's becoming it's getting a lot of momentum in the space. There's a lot of larger enterprises, governments, organizations, and businesses that are starting to take that corporate identity project really, really seriously. And I have Darlene and Kristin here. I'm going to throw to in a second, who are going to introduce themselves, and then we're going to throw in about what is corporate identity, how it relates to branding and marketing, how it doesn't relate to branding and marketing, and how it's important in the mix. So I'll throw to Kristin, and then Kristin, you can throw to Darlene, and then I'll start the conversation. Kristin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. I'm really delighted to be here. For those that do not know Fontaine Swatch, my name is Kristin Hancock. I'm a principal at Fontaine Swatch. We are a brand identity and design agency. We specialise in creating foundations for corporates and enterprise businesses, and that is hinging on the delivery of a corporate identity and expression of a corporate identity. I'd like to hand over now to Darlene, just to give us some background on her.
Thank you. Thanks, Christopher and Kristin. My name's Darlene Mattiske-Wood, and I'm CEO of Australian Military Bank. Obviously, very distinct organisation in terms of brand and identity, strongly aligned to defence community, defence force and military. I have, I suppose, a strong background in the development of cultural alignment with strategy and identity. And I think that we're all very, very passionate about corporate identity, which creates some really good synergy for conversations today.
Absolutely. And so the reason why we're having this conversation is because it's such a point of strength for so many organizations, and yet it's being overlooked, misunderstood, or maybe underappreciated. And so basically, corporate identity and its subsets of organizational alignment and cultural unification, the way I sort of define it is it's about the sense of brand from the business perspective or the organization perspective. So it's not selling from marketing, but it's related to marketing today, because having a corporate identity is about understanding your mission and your vision, your purpose from an overarching point of view. And so I know Kristin and I have done this for a lot of organizations in the past to help them, and sitting down and doing a workshop and helping them define themselves. But I think I want to throw to Darlene first, is because Darlene, you've done a lot of this work. We've had previous chats at the Australian Military Bank where you've done a lot of work in this corporate identity space. And so I want to take this episode to sort of define what it is. So can you sort of share your definition and how you've done it?
Yeah. So I haven't really sort of taken just corporate identity, but it's an integral part of, for me, strategic alignment in an organisation. And without strategic alignment across the whole business model, target market, and your operating model, you can erode, or perhaps a better way of explaining it is you lose the opportunity to increase the velocity of the sense of purpose that you can have when you align in your entire organisation and you align everyone behind that. And corporate identity is that mechanism and tool to be able to do that. So to take that strong sense of purpose, understand what that is, and help to create that, and then to align that across the entire organisation, so that no one is confused about what we're here for, and what we're trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
Different to brand is like the external perception of the organisation. But what you want to do is use your corporate identity to positively create the right brand, because every organisation has a brand, whether you like it or not. It may not be a good brand, but what you want to do is use the concept of corporate identity to actually make sure you're steering that perception in the right direction, internally and externally. And there's nothing worse than having that misalignment between the external and the internal, but also to have messages that you're sending to your people where they don't feel it. And then every person in the organisation touches so many people every day, whether they're dealing with customers or not. it's really important that they feel that corporate identity and they understand it, and they then can project that outward, and that supports your brand. But corporate identity is so much more than that. It's, the symbolism, the messages, the communication, the words that you use, integral to shaping the culture.
Absolutely.
Really,
yeah, and I think to build on that, Darlene, we try and look at it as it's the articulation and the expression of your purpose. So what is the purpose of the organisation? Have you clearly defined that? But then where you were saying it's getting that alignment. So what you're building is a framework of a lot of the intangible aspects of your business. So the language you use, the visual expression, the way that the culture is communicated. So a lot of these intangibles, it's actually putting a tangible framework around that so that you can consistently apply it throughout the organisation, and you deliver the purpose throughout every step. It is, as you say, it's clearly about getting that internal alignment to promote the business externally. It's not branding. It's not brand. It's the use of your brand and the alignment of your brand, but driving that through a tangible framework that's governed, that really hinges on the articulation expression of your purpose.
Oh, correct.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. I feel like, and we've all talked about this before, is people often think that marketing and corporate identity are the same things. And it's actually like, I mean, I know it's very simplified, guys, and we'll get into this a bit more, but like, I always find that marketing is more that product-based, service-based, external-based, very deliberate messaging to get sales and build awareness out in the market. Whereas corporate identity takes that step back and determines all aspects of the organization. So like, what coheres everyone together? What's that united value and that united ethos? And my background is corporate. Before I started my business, I was in corporate, and so many of those organizations attempted this corporate identity exercise and just didn't get anywhere. And the reason why, and then what happens is you end up getting those silos. Right. So like you've got a sales team that never talks to the marketing team, which never talks to the finance team, and there's no sense of
alignment.
unification. Yeah. And I know, Darlene, you see this, and Kristin, we've worked on many organizations where,
Yeah, absolutely.
and it's like some departments don't know other departments. And so the point of these podcasts is to really educate people on that corporate identity is that attribute and that well-defined part of your business where everyone from the CEO all the way down to all the teams and the organizational staff and even some stakeholders have some sort of say that unifies and unites and solidifies and crystallizes that reason for being for the organization. And I know, Darlene, you've done a bit of work in this. Like, what kind of advantages have you seen when you've started to like rip that apart and redefine it and put it back together?
Yeah. So when you don't have a clear understanding of what corporate identity is and how even values and purpose are integral to that, you get values and action, as in what people do in an organisation. You get values and action gaps, which is what you're describing. I think that's what I would call it, Chris. It's like then what happens is you get inauthenticity. It's not authentic in the organization. It doesn't feel authentic. It's perceived by people inside the organization and outside the organization that the standards and the messages mean nothing. It's like creating a set of values and putting them on the wall. No one even follows them anyway.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That inauthenticity, you're better off not articulating your values if you're not going to follow them.
Yeah.
However, what a lot of, I think, people don't understand is that that inauthenticity can happen by default if you don't understand what corporate identity is and how corporate identity can have a life of its own, like a brand.
Yeah.
You need to be clear about what it encompasses, how important it is. And one thing we were talking about just before was the cost of recovery of corporate identity.
Absolutely.
It's like 100 times more than what it costs to actually actively manage and maintain a corporate identity, so that it isn't just about attracting your target market. You need to be clear on who your target market is and what they're seeking. because having corporate identity that's purely aligned to a leader is dangerous, because leaders come and go.
Yes.
So you need to make sure that, it's not a fad thing. It's about who's your target market? What are you all about? What's your value proposition to the target market? And make sure that all of the corporate identity aspects align to that. So you're speaking to that audience.
Yep.
But inside the organisation, with everything that's happening today around data, cybersecurity, the threats and the things that can go wrong with a business.
Yes.
If you are not looking after your corporate identity, when things go wrong, it's really difficult to recover, and some can't. That it could take years. But if you're maintaining and managing your corporate identity, when something goes wrong, your tone of voice comes through. You've actually built up like a bank of coins, I say, like all the good things. It can be, your identity can be a bit rocked, but you can recover faster. And what happens is you can invest in what you need to do to remediate and look after your customers. You're not then scrambling to try and actually send the message that you have a good culture and you're a good organisation. You've done that work.
Correct.
You are
exactly.
Then apologising and remediating and putting the investment where it needs to go. Your messaging is aligned to all the things that you're actually saying and you have been saying. So it's a much faster recovery. Otherwise,
if it's not there.
Yeah.
So, and I would even go further. Yeah. So, Darlene, I'd go even further to say it's not just a tone of voice, it's actually a tone of action. So, so people,
like
because what you find in the organisation is any organisation, once it exists, it has an identity. But if it's not a clearly articulated identity, and if there's no commonality communication to the way that the brand within the organisation lives and breathes, then you actually, if you haven't structured that and clearly articulated it, you are open to misrepresentation, or you're open to people taking action that's not aligned with the business goals and the business objectives and the business culture. So if you don't define it, as you say, the risk to increase cost or the risk to recovery is so much more elongated because you don't have that tone of action that's in there. And I think that's something that, one of the things I really enjoyed when we caught up a number of times now, Darlene, is the way that you have articulated through Australian Military Bank how you've gotten that consistency of culture, but it's culture through visible action and visible leadership that people can see and they can repeat. And so they know when they're given a crossroads or they're given a decision to make, they don't have to have the leader in the room making the decision because they've observed the behaviour of the leaders beforehand, so they know what the right decision is.
And I think that's
because you can't be everywhere.
Exactly.
No,
and that's the point of defining it, right? Like that's the point of defining, like people often go, all right, great, I get it. I get what corporate identity is, right? And that's one step. But I think what you're saying there, Kristin, and Darlene, you jumped in there, is that to say that it's about getting everyone together and defining it and putting it down on paper and showing what the images look like, the colors look like, the messaging looks like, and all of that. And getting everyone's buy-in, I think, is another thing that we're sort of alluding around to, is that it's not just, okay, like Darlene said, it's not just values on a page that they've just stamped on a wall. It's like getting everyone together and deciding what we stand for going forward. Like Kristin, I know we've worked with a few organizations where they've lost their corporate identity. They might have had it 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but now what's happened is the business has evolved.
Change. Yep.
And it is.
Exactly.
And the
and if it's
really fast.
Exactly. Because if it's not defined, it's open to interpretation. And that's the key.
Exactly. And the problem is that they need to understand that everyone has to be involved. Go on, Darlene. Sorry.
Yes. I was just going to say, look, one of the, I want to sort of throw in something probably it's highly topical and maybe a bit controversial, but corporate identity, when you're, I was talking a bit about it, how it can actually help you in a crisis. You both touched on, decision making and actions. One of the things that I think is really important right now is that corporate identity is so critical with this potential over-reliance on AI.
Yes.
And I've been actually about to do an AI course myself, and I think, everyone is making sure that they understand how to use it and what to do. You know, we're in the midst of our strategy around AI, etc. But over reliance on AI can actually erode corporate identity and have things feel robotic and generic. The human aspect, no matter what happens with AI, we're still dealing with humans.
Yeah,
and we have humans in the organisation. And corporate identity, to me, is about understanding the human aspect, and it brings in the psychology of people. Think about when you're talking about getting everyone together. I've seen some shocking examples of where organisations actually are working on their values, and they've got sub-tiers and subsets and all different mixed messages all over the place, and no one knows what to follow. And a lot of that is a symptom of not having clarity around corporate identity, and then getting everyone together and being really, really clear on, you know, the values and behaviours that will support that corporate identity. And they say, oh, we've got to, you know, define our values or whatever, but they don't know why they're doing it. They don't know that the alignment with your target market and the products that you're selling and the value proposition you're trying to create, or what your differentiation is into the future, and do you even have one?
Yes.
So simplification, simplifying it down to corporate, what's our identity? What are we all about?
What's our purpose?
Is now more important. It's more important now than it's ever been before, because everything is moving so fast. But there is a danger, I think, in aligning corporate identity or allowing, say, you know, a few leaders in the organisation to be the ones to define that, because they come and go. And if it is based on groupthink of a few people, it will not be sustainable. Because
agreed.
Groupthink doesn't withstand the test of time. Making sure you're aligning to your target market stands the test of time, because you have to innovate, you have to shift, you have to change, you have to be able to use tools like AI, but knowing when and why and how is what corporate identity gives you around trends and, you know, the micro trends and things like AI, because you create guidelines from your corporate identity.
Yes.
And they're guidelines.
Absolutely,
for actions,
I agree.
and
they entirely
encompass purpose and values and etc.
I agree.
So I've had a lot of success working with corporate identity in organisations on strategy and growth.
Yes. And this is the thing. In the next a few episodes, we're going to cover some of these other parts of. So today we're doing sort of what is corporate identity, but then we want to talk about, like in the next few episodes, is the impact of that, having that identity a little bit more, and what it actually looks like. But in general, what we're seeing here is that the impact, as a summary, and I'll throw around the room here, but I'm just seeing that the impact is being profound, just because a lot of organizations that are able to sit down and authentically define themselves, what they are, what they stand for, where they've come from, what they're doing, where they're headed, all of those things that are internal based, strength based, unification based, and it's like what role we play in the environment, all those kind of things help, like you said, Darlene, improve resilience, and Kristin, like reduce confusion, you both said. And then what it actually looks like is, I mean, we'll talk about this later, but it's like workshops and putting together like that document that doesn't just float down from on high. You know, it's like, Darlene, I'm sure when you were doing it in your organization, that it was involved a lot of workshops and a lot of group work. I don't know, Kristin, we've done that a bit. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I think, yes, so to follow up on that, so absolutely, to put it through an organisation, you got to achieve clarity of purpose, because that leads to clarity of action, and the only way you implement that is if it's run throughout the entire ecosystem of the organisation, which means you've got to get to the heart of what it is that you do, and then the heart of, okay, so how does that manifest itself and represent itself in terms of the values that we operate to, the value proposition for the organisation, not the product or service, which I think Darlene mentioned before we came onto the podcast. But so the only way you get to that is a lot of definitional discussions that you have at different touch points within the organisation, and it's needs to be established and defined as a blueprint at the outset. But that doesn't meet a point in time where it stops. It's actually, in my experience, it's something that you actually come back to and it's living, so
Yes.
that you've got to work on it. You keep working on it and you keep working around the edges on how you actually can evidence action and evidence behaviour in the workplace so that you can reinforce it and continually reinforce it. But we can talk more in other podcasts about how we actually implement, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got some great examples that I can share about the outcomes, or, you know, taking a problem and then how it's linked to corporate identity, how you can resolve so many things. But one of the, I think, important aspects is that anything in the organisation that you can do to increase your output, your productivity and your velocity of response in a positive way has got to be good for every organisation, because in a time of change, and when people are disjointed, driving through fear, they don't understand or have clarity, and people are not acting in unison, you lose 45%, up to 45%, sometimes more, productivity.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
If you just think about it in terms of the economic equation, I always come at it from the human and the importance of that, and what that can generate and do in terms of the goodwill inside the organisation and externally, and knowing how to behave when things go wrong. You've got to know how to behave when things are right in order to know how to behave when things go wrong.
Yeah.
And drive that through the culture. But you actually get everyone headed in the same direction. And when everything is energy, and when you get that, the power of the energy operating together in unison, you increase your productivity, your output, your growth potential, and you can do so much more with less.
Yes.
You don't need the extra 50 people that are running around trying to figure out and work out what's going on.
Yeah.
What happens is you're actually looking outward to the organisation, and everyone they feel like they're part of the team. They feel like they're part of the culture.
Yes.
You do need a level of turnover, to get new thinking, etc. But what you want to do is make sure that you're retaining the people that fit that corporate identity. But if you don't understand what the corporate identity is, who do you need? It'll be skills based only, not just not cultural based as well.
Love
Absolutely.
it. Well,
and I think it was that. Yeah, sorry, Chris, you go.
I was going to say, I was just about to wrap it up because we'll have it into the next episode. But is there any last thoughts? Otherwise, we'll just get everyone to check in on the next 2 episodes. We're going to talk about the impact of like a corporate identity program and some examples, as well as what corporate identity and unification and alignment actually looks like. Any final thoughts on that? I think we covered it really well, Chris, in terms of what it does, how it impacts the organisation, and the effect it can have on as Darlene said, today it's about responding to change and responding with high velocity to change, because that's the only constant now is change. So it's about how your organisation responds with velocity to change, and I think corporate identity sets that blueprint. So that's it for me.
Great.
Sounds
excellent. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this particular special episode about corporate identity. Thank you very much, Darlene and Kristin, for joining me in this. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen out for the next 2 episodes, which are going to be delving more into corporate identity and cultural unification and organisational alignment. So thank you, everyone. See you in the next episode.
Thank you.